Welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast. My name is Coach Scott. I'll be your host today. Guys, I got two great guests for you today. I'm going to bring them both in. Both of them athletes that I coach, both of them wonderful people, both of them members of our advisory board of the Ordinary Marathoner Foundation, Mike Romans and Erin Shepard. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I know. So we're in three different locations, and the camera will kind of bounce around to whoever's talking. So we got a glimpse of Erin there for a brief moment. We didn't get a glimpse of Mike, but we'll see plenty of you over the next few minutes for sure. Guys, Ironman Des Moines, big race for both of you. The three of us went out there. You guys went out there and braved the elements and did all that wonderful stuff. Let's start though. We kind of wanted to recap the race, and we wanted to recap sort of the whole experience of doing a half Ironman for both of you guys. It was your first race, and you're both traveling by yourselves. What did you guys think? Let's start with Mike. What did you think of, what were you anticipating of Des Moines and traveling to Des Moines for the race? What was your feelings going into the trip?
Well, like you said, traveling by yourself was kind of tough because I had if it would have been straight through, an 8-hour drive. And, when you're going into your first race and when you struggle with anxiety like I do, I was a little bit worried that having that much time alone and to think would be brutal. And really it wasn't. It was nice. A lot of people gave me a lot of words of encouragement, a lot of people from the team. So thank you guys. But, I just kind of let it be and I let it flow and put in my audio book and drove down and just kind of tried to unwind that way. And, got into town and I've never even been in that area. So I had no idea, but it was really quite easy to get around, and thankful for GPS, of course, but.
Yeah, we'll move on to, both of you guys, is really interesting how we all kind of converged on this little town in Iowa, in a city in Iowa. And, you driving from the North Dakota, and then Erin driving up from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then I got the flight in, but all kind of converging on this one little spot. Erin, what did you think? What were you thinking of? How about your trip into town? Were you going through similar things as Mike was?
Yeah, I think so. So I actually chose this race because Iowa is my home state. I'm from Sioux City, Iowa originally. And I actually chose this race specifically because it's in my home state. And I wanted to do my first major race at home, quote unquote. But I hadn't been into Des Moines probably since I was a teenager. But it was great to get back into the state and kind of go back home for me.
Yeah. And so the drive itself for you, both of you guys, I think it's, going into your first race, the last thing you want to do is have to worry about schlepping your bike around and shipping your bike or however you're going to, bringing the bike with you on a plane. So you both got at least the chance to just drive with the bike. And did you think a lot? I know, Mike, you already kind of alluded to this, but Erin, did you think a lot about the race as you were driving, or were you just trying to get there?
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I'm pretty sure that the race just consumed all of my thoughts for probably the past month or so. It was just a matter of checking the weather. What's the weather going to do? How hot is it right now? How hot is it going to be that day? What gear did I bring? All my gear? Did I forget something? Did I? No, the entire 6.5 hour car ride was consumed with that, I'm sure. So, just listen to podcasts, listen to music, and just try to make the best of it. I did prefer traveling alone. I know that sounds weird. I do have an incredibly supportive family, an incredibly supportive spouse who really does support me doing these races. But I think that driving up by myself just gave me that time to sort of be with my feelings, be with my thoughts, and just mentally prepare for the race.
And when you guys got into town, were you, we'll start with Mike. Have you been to Des Moines before? What were you expecting? Was the city, from your thoughts going into Des Moines to your thoughts sort of leaving, what was it that did you like the city? Did you was it a good city for a race? What were your thoughts on Des Moines before and then after you've kind of saw it and experienced it?
Really before, like, I mean, honestly, I didn't care what it was like. When I went there, I didn't care what it was like. I went there to race. I didn't realize how much the town mattered in that, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense, but when I left, Des Moines was great. I loved the people of Des Moines. The joke is, Minnesota nice, North Dakota nice up here. And it's the same down there. I mean, people were great. Anywhere you'd go, people were always willing to help. And, just adding the camaraderie of the triathlon community too was just awesome overall.
Yeah. And I think we got to experience that firsthand. We met a bunch of people down there. Why don't we ask the same question? Erin, you said you grew up in Iowa and you said you'd been to Des Moines in your teenage years. What were your thoughts about the community, triathlon community, and just the city of Des Moines after visiting it again?
So the city of Des Moines actually has pretty deep triathlon roots. The original triathlon that was done in Des Moines was actually the Hy-Vee triathlon. They also host the Iowa Games and a couple of other triathlon events in Des Moines. So the triathlon roots run pretty deep there. And I think that really lent itself to an Ironman branded race in Des Moines. I think that for the race they put on for a half Ironman, I think it was fantastic. I know that when Ironman was looking at putting on a Midwest full, came down to between Des Moines and Tulsa for the full, and Tulsa got the full and Des Moines got the half. And I understand the sense that made now. I understand why they did that, because for what it was, for where everything was staged and where transition was, where the swim was, I couldn't personally imagine it being a full. But I think for the race that they put on, I think it was absolutely fantastic venue for it.
Yeah, I just watching you guys too, I thought so too. I thought even as a spectator, there were plenty of spots where I could see you guys, and I did my best to try to do that, and it was fairly convenient to drive around. Obviously, one of the things that we spoke about was the parking. And, if you weren't sort of right on the somehow right on at the park and you had to drive in, you had a long walk from parking to transition. And I think that's probably the major gripe with the race at that point. What do you guys think?
Oh, I would absolutely 100% agree. I have actually reached out to Ironman Des Moines and the race director like that. I believe that walk negatively impacted my race in the heat. I believe that much time on your feet before a major race is detrimental. So for
uphill too, you got to walk, right? I mean, it's uphill.
Yeah,
it's like uphill over
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like uphill both ways. Even by the time you parked in the parking lot, walked uphill, and then go down to transition, then back up the hill to get back to the parking lot. I mean, that was well over a mile walk. And if you had to go downtown to Village for registration, merch, anything like that, it was at least another quarter to half mile walk, depending on where you parked downtown. And given the fact that last Thursday when we arrived, it was 100 degrees and then it was 90 all 3 days leading up to the race, it was in the 90s. It was very difficult. And a lot of people have said this, it was difficult to maintain their hydration plan, to stay off of their feet and have fresh legs for the race. I believe that the logistics could definitely have been better supported.
Yeah. I think I have to agree with you there. Mike, were you feeling sort of the same?
Yeah, for sure. It was, I mean, and truthfully, I felt almost worse for, somebody like you. Obviously, we're there to race. We're going to move around a lot anyway. So, I being as it's really my first experience, I can't say how much it affected me. I'm sure it did. And I just, I don't maybe give that enough credit. But, I mean, for how many steps did you say that you put on that day just moving around? I mean, it was almost equal to what we did.
Walking around, yeah.
It was almost equal to what we did. So maybe we should get you a medal and a hat and whatnot. And
thanks, man.
they should have the spectator ones.
Thanks. I appreciate that. But no, you guys earned them, you earned your stripes that day for sure. We talk about weather, and I got to tell you, ever since I've been home, it's been like 75 degrees, mostly overcast, like the perfect racing day. I went out this morning and it was a little chilly, and there's just like a little sprinkle of rain. And I was like, man, this is just, it just, when you plan a race a year in advance, the roll of the dice is always going to be the weather. And yes, you guys, you mentioned it was like 100 degrees. And we went to scout the bike course, and man, it was no trees, no shade, nothing. It was just out in the open, humid, hot, and just it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And you guys held it together pretty good. And I know being your first race, it must have been tough. And then, going to sleep the night before the race, we had the warnings that potentially thunderstorms. We've been looking at the weather. I think Erin's been looking at the weather every day for the last 2 months, trying to figure out what it was going to be like. Let's talk about, we're in the hotel the night before race day. You guys have everything packed up. We went through everything. We walked through everything. You knew you were prepared. The one thing that's kind of hanging over your head is the weather. And you guys had very different approaches to this. So Mike, why don't you start us off and sort of like that anxiety, that pre-race anxiety the night before the race, having the specter of potentially bad weather. How are you dealing with it mentally going into that night?
Well, after I found my shoes, then I just kind of I can't. That was funny, but we'll have to I just had that mentality that everybody is going to be going over it. Really, the weather didn't bother me until the morning of, and we can get my mood that later, but. Really, I thought pretty calm and collective. I was just like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm not going to look at it. And I'm not, I'll wait and see what happens. And I know that everybody's going to have to go through it too. So it's not like I'm alone in the process.
Yeah. And what about you, Erin, the night before? What were you were, I think, a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a completely frenetic person in that way. I'm the one that's sitting there with 3 different apps open on my phone and comparing and going, okay, which one's going to be right? Which one's going to be right? So no, I totally had a different, I was trying to take very much the control the controllable. It's going to be what it's going to be. And there's nothing we can do about it. My hope at that point, though, was that they just didn't cancel it all together. I just didn't want a full cancellation of the race. I didn't mind shortening the courses or starting late or any of those things. I just didn't want them to cancel it altogether. It would have felt like an absolute waste of a drive, of a flight and all of these things, even though we had a really cool plan of what we were going to do if the race did get canceled. But no, that was my thing. Is like, just don't cancel it outright. We've come so far. I just don't want to cancel it outright.
Yeah, and you guys have been training, together, over a year for this thing, and we did wake up and we heard the thunder. We saw the lightning and really the driving rain, really, really bad. Erin, I just remember. We had the alarm set and she's like, I'm just going to go down and get my coffee and kind of monitor the situation. Mike, you had a different idea of what to do in the morning. What did you do?
I went to I even woke up before the alarm and I went and looked and you had looked at the phone and said, yeah, Erin says that she's going to go get coffee. I'm like, I'm just going to bed. Like I was, when I saw that, I kind of immediately flipped that and I'm like, I just want to go home. Like, this sucks. I just want to go home. And because like Erin said, I was disappointed, and because I put so much into it, time, money, sacrifices, that to not be able to do, what I love about this sport is that the results are based on me. Like if I have a bad race and I screw up, it's on me. Or if I have a really good race and I PR, it's on me. Well, this wasn't, and that ticked me off. Like this was the only way that outside intervention, so to speak, could get in the way of this, and I was not happy.
Yeah,
I'm quiet, I'm not happy.
Yeah, and I remember, we sat there, after your little snooze, we sat there at the breakfast table and just looking outside, and there were moments where the rain just kept coming down, and it looked like it was never going to stop. And at a certain point, Mike, it just seemed like, Erin was just kind of like, I think her mind, every time she looked out and it started to thunder or rain harder, her race was just getting condensed a little bit smaller and smaller. Your mind was kind of like, I don't even want to bother. At what point now, when eventually they did say, all right, we're going to try to give this thing a go. We're going to start late, cut the bike course down. What was your thoughts, Mike, on, were you able to kind of flip the switch back and get into race mode as soon as they announced that, or were you kind of like defeated? What was the mentality there?
No, I was pleasantly surprised that I was able to get back into race mode. When they started talking that, oh, we're going to have a noon start, yada, then I kind of started to be like, okay, maybe this could. So I started to kind of plan in my head. The one regret that I have is I didn't really continue to do what I needed to do. We were sitting around. I should have been drinking water. I should have been, taking in a little bit of nutrition, and I didn't. I sat there and drank coffee.
Yeah.
That, kind of contributed to a few of the issues that were had out on the course. But, other than that, I was pretty able to flip over and get excited, and then I kind of went to the room by myself, got my stuff, and I was like, okay, I was able to psych myself up, and I'm like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah. And it kind of like, I think I think it was a little different for Erin. I remember, we walked over to the course and it was still raining. And especially when we parked and we started walking, we sat in the car for a little bit and started walking over. There were moments where the rain was pretty heavy. And for you, Erin, was it like it seems like for Mike kind of has like a switch where he's either on or completely off, but you kind of like, you're more like it's like a wave coming into shore. It's like up and down, up and down. What, how was from the moment that you knew that, all right, you were going to go out and do something today, you were going to race, where was your thoughts and how did you deal with the weather and all the impediments there?
Well, my first thought was, well, why didn't you shorten swim? I was kind of hoping they would shorten the swim a little. But no, they called for a full swim, full 1.2 mile swim, half bike, and full half marathon run. So I was both glad and upset. I thought they were going to shorten the swim course a little. They chose not to. But they did do a half bike. My biggest concern when we got to the parking lot, started walking to transition, it was still raining heavy, was I've never ridden in heavy rain. I've never ridden in the rain, period. I don't know exactly how my bike was going to handle, especially on a hillier course in the rain. So I absolutely had some anxiety about how the bike was going to go. I was trying to ignore my swim anxiety. I was trying to ignore that and just focusing on, checking the brakes on my bike and, how can I grip? And that's where my focus was when we got into transition. Just completely ignored the run, which, as we'll talk about later, was a completely bad idea. But but yeah, and like Mike, though, I was also struggling with the fact that the delay threw off my entire nutrition and hydration game. I sat downstairs in the hotel and drank 3 cups of coffee, which, that probably most likely negatively affected my race. I did not drink the amount of water and electrolytes that I really should have, knowing that, or, not assuming that the sun was going to come out in the amount of brutality that it did.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that was a key factor right there, was that you look outside and it's raining and it's overcast and you kind of assume, all right, well, I'm going to be racing in overcast, cooler weather. And you kind of maybe, lesson for all of us not to get too complacent about the weather when it's just a passing storm, because it did come out brutally later on that day. So we got to transition and, everything was wet. Did that bother you at all when you guys were trying to get ready and lay out your station, your transition station? Did that, or was it just a non-factor? Either one of you.
For me, it really didn't. I kind of thought, I'm like, oh man, this is, because I mean, the transition area was just a big field. And I thought, oh man, we're going to be trouncing around in the mud. And it wasn't. And, I mean, even setting your stuff out, the thing I was the most concerned about was, okay, how can I put this and still be, have a decently fast transition, but not get all my clothes all wet. And then, that kind of started to open up, and, everybody was just super nice and super helpful on, okay, well, hey, try this and let's do this. Let's set our stuff like this so that we can maximize our space and kind of block some water, and everybody was just working together. It was really cool.
I would absolutely agree with that. The people in transition, I don't think that I've met kinder people anywhere, especially when people were asking, oh, is this your first? Yeah, it is. Oh, okay, here, let me help you with, XYZ. When it came to everything being wet, yeah, I had a little bit of concern because I do wear hearing aids, and I was concerned about where I was going to put my hearing aids, during the swim. Were they going to get wet? Is my stuff going to get kicked around? That sort of thing. The night before the race, I actually took some gallon bags and put all of my stuff in gallon bags so that it was set out to in swim, bike, run, so that I could keep them there and keep them on my towel and keep them from getting wet. So once I got there into transition, my main concern was my bike. I think that was my biggest thing, is I needed to check the brakes. Were they going to be okay? But once we got into transition, the rain really tapered off. It was just sprinkles. By the time I got my wetsuit on and we got ready to walk down, it was no more than just minor sprinkles in the rain.
Yeah, I think, my concern for you guys was that potentially I was like worried there might be like some standing puddles in transition or real, like Mike said, really muddy spots. But I mean, it held up. It was a lot of rain, and it held up pretty darn good, given the circumstances. So in that respect, I think, a little bit of luck on your side for once, over the weekend. Now we head to the swim, and, we swam a little bit. They had like a little practice area. We were able to kind of get in the day before. Was it the day before or two day before, right?
Day before.
Yeah.
And you were able to kind of get in. It was warm. The weather had been so warm that the water temperature was warm, so it was wetsuit optional, which I know for the two of you had kind of thrown sort of a factor in that maybe we weren't expecting when you start training for these things. But you both decided to wear the wetsuit. Going into the swim, any apprehensions, any sort of expectations or fear? We'll start with you, Mike, on that one. When you're heading over to the swim, you've been thinking about it. We practiced it. What's going through your mind, or is it just excitement?
I was actually pleasantly comfortable, surprisingly comfortable is maybe a better word. I mean, I thought I would be, when you picture a 1.2 mile swim, that's always hard to picture until, and once they got the buoys up and we looked at it, I'm like, wow, this isn't that bad. So really, I felt decent about it. And, as we'll talk in a little bit, that was probably presumptive, but it was fine.
That's kind of neat too, how they walked you guys out. Like the walk from transition to swim is about probably close to a half mile. It's almost like, like walking, like I think of like a football player walking through the tunnel from the locker room to the field. Like, did that give you any sort of, was that pumping you up a little bit? It seemed like really, like, I don't know. I was watching you guys, all the people walk out, and I was like, man, like I almost wish I was in the race instead of watching. It looked really cool.
I mean, I thought it was really cool. Now, one of the things that I struggle with is massive open water swim anxiety. I have huge anxiety. I've had panic attacks in the open water before. And one of the things that I really liked about the venue at Des Moines is that the lake is super non-intimidating. It is so tiny. It's really, it's a pond. Let's be honest. I called it the pond. I don't know if I did that to be funny or to make myself feel better. Either way, but it was a pond, and the swim was literally shore to shore to shore to shore. You couldn't you couldn't not see the shore at any given moment. So it was a very non-intimidating swim. And I went into it with the mindset of I was going to go from buoy to buoy to buoy. And that worked for me. I actually felt pretty good walking over to the swim. I was nervous, absolutely, but I felt good walking over to the swim and seating myself. I did start in the very back. I think I was like the third to last actually in the water. And so I started in the very back, which I guess ended up being a really good thing because the swim turned into a bit of a mosh pit out there. So, but yeah, I think the walk over to the swim felt good. I was ready to go. The rain had stopped. It was feeling really good. I was ready to do this.
Yeah. And from a spectator perspective, it was super calm. It just, the water, even after the rain, you kind of sometimes in the big lakes, you expect a little bit of, chop, but there was nothing there. It was just super calm. There were a lot of athletes, so that did take a long time for you guys to get in the water. I was actually watching with Erin's parents, and we couldn't pick you guys out. It was too far away, so we couldn't figure out. We were kind of going. We get the little updates on the Ironman tracker of when you got in the water, and we kind of tried to follow it, but there was just no way. But one of the big complaints seems to have been that, it was too crowded. The swim was too crowded. I know, Mike, you have a story about this, sort of getting in your way, I think, and sort of impeding your potential for a strong swim. What happened to you out there?
Well, I was getting into the water, and I think this, the thing that was tough about the wetsuits is there was no grouping with the wetsuits. It was everybody in a wetsuit. So you could be a 145 swimmer, or you could be a 345 swimmer, and you were going out at the same time. So that was kind of hard. And I was going out, and, I take a little bit of time to get comfortable. And just as I started to get comfortable, I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if I swam over somebody or what happened, but I got kicked in the chest and completely knocked the wind out of me. And I tried to stand up and get out of the way. And just as that happened, I got kicked right in the face. And I'm thinking by the same person. And I was bleeding out of, I don't know if it was my nose or my mouth, or I'm not entirely sure. I couldn't tell. But so I was kind of delusional and trying to find a kayak or a buoy or something to grab onto and gain my composure. And it took a little while to do that. And then, I went and tried to, then again, had to kind of start over in my mental game and really get started again. And then just as I got going again, the hover buoy or the hover boat came just gunning past me, which caused a really big wave it wasn't big in perspective, but compared to what we were dealing with, it was, and we weren't getting in a swim rhythm dealing with waves. So that hit me and took me aback. And then I heard a female crying. So I immediately got really worried about Erin. And so it was really, really hard for me to gain composure to the point when I got out and I grabbed onto the paddleboard and asked the lifeguard or the safety gal, I said, am I even going to make the cutoff? Because I looked and there was virtually nobody behind me. And I asked her, I said, am I going to make the cutoff? And if she would have said, I don't think so, I'd have got out right there. And she goes, I have no idea. She said, just go for a Sunday swim and see what happens. And that was just about at the corner buoy to turn, to go on the little straightaway before you got to the big straightaway. And so I did. I put that into the mentality. And then by the time I got to the straightaway buoy, which was actually pretty quick comparatively, then I settled in and really got in a good rhythm and did well. I mean, I did as well comparatively, not necessarily as well time-wise as I wanted to, but I finished and kind of gave a few people watching the tracker, maybe coach included, a bit of a heart attack. But
you both did.
It was closer than I anticipated making, but you know what? I made it, and that's what matters.
Yeah, and it was good. It was good to see you coming out of the water finally. But I'm glad you got through it, and it's tough out there sometimes. And some of the pictures that we saw afterwards kind of go to prove that point. It looked like maybe the kayaks were a little close to the buoys. Some situation I looked, and there's also just a couple thousand swimmers in there, so it's it looked like just a tough day in the water, just a really crowded day. Erin, let's go over to you. So you Now, I remember when you did the Olympic about 6 months ago, and you had some challenges in the water, but you overcame those pretty well over last weekend during the race. And as you were swimming, did you find a rhythm? Did you get going? Did you?
Oh yeah.
Did you wonder at times if you were pushing close to the time? How were you dealing with the swim?
So, so that Olympic that I did was actually last summer already, last summer, July. So to just kind of recap what that Olympic was like, I had a massive panic attack in the water, and I had a major freak out. And the RD, who I know personally, allowed me to use my orange safety buoy, the safety swimmers that people use for open water swim practice. And she let me put that on, and it became more of a mental crutch for me. And so I struggled with for the last year with anxiety of, if I don't have a buoy to hang on to, if I get tired, I'm going to drown. That's where my head was. And it has taken me a really long time to get over that panic. And I actually did 3 weeks ago, did a sprint try out in Oklahoma City, just so I could do a small race without a buoy, without that help, so I could make sure that I was going to be able to do it when I got to Des Moines. And I did it successfully in El Reno, and I was so excited, and I did it within decent time, not great time, but decent time. And so I felt like, okay, I'm going to be able to make it for Des Moines. And I talked with a few friends that are Ironman here in Tulsa, and the best advice I got was just don't look at the farthest buoy. Don't look at the straightaway. Don't look at the finish line. Look at the next buoy. Pick up your head, sight the next buoy, and just swim to that. And then if you get to that next buoy, great, then just go to the next buoy and go to the next buoy. And that's what I did. And that absolutely worked for me. For the first 500 yards, it was interesting because when I got into the water, my brain immediately started to panic, like, no, we can't. And I'm not doing this today. And it took me about 10 seconds. I just stood there for about 10 seconds, let my wetsuit fill up, and said, no, I'm going to go. And my brain kept, no, we can't do this. And I just, one stroke, just take one more stroke. And I did. I settled in rather quickly, and I was really excited. I'm like, oh, yay, I'm going to actually find a rhythm. And like Mike, I didn't get kicked. I didn't get hit in the water, but there was a lot of people panicking because I was one of the last ones in the water. All the panickers were the last ones in the water. So there were quite a few people immediately going for kayaks and, running, going for the buoys and climbing over each other because they didn't feel safe. So I just stayed as close as I could to a buoy so I could sight better, and just tried to find a rhythm. And I did eventually find a really good rhythm. It was a slow rhythm, but I came out of the water with 2 minutes to spare with cutoff. And when I was in the water, though, I didn't think about whether or not I was going to make cutoff. I didn't care. Honestly, when I was in the water, I didn't care if I made the cutoff. I just wanted to finish the swim. If I could get out of the water and cross that line, then I've already won. I already won because I beat the panic that set into me so bad last summer. I didn't care about the time. Now I was, however, somebody that actually smacked somebody. I felt really bad about that. There was a gentleman who was backstroking next to me, and he was backstroking a little closer to the buoy, and I just went up with a stroke and got him right in the face. Really, I felt bad about that though.
Yeah. And unfortunately those things happen, and they do. And the more you do the sport, the more you kind of just, sometimes you just got to hit each other. And then it's not even like, you don't even have to apologize. Just keep going. And, you got to realize that these things are going to happen. I will question somebody doing a backstroke so close to the buoys, though. That's not really good form. It should be wider if you're going to do that. But we did, I was standing with your parents and we were looking out. We saw a lot of breaststrokers. We saw a lot of people just stopping in the middle of the water and just kind of staying there. A lot of people grabbing the kayaks, and it did seem like a disproportionate number of people that I would have expected were having some issues, and whether that's due to the crowd or due to some unpreparedness, I don't know. I can't really say. It's sort of like an individual basis, I guess, per athlete. But Both of you guys made it. I'd say Mike, you gave me a little bit of heart attack. Erin, we were looking at the clock the whole time you were going around on the tracker, and before it gave you a swim time, it looked like you were over the cutoff, and I wasn't disappointed because I knew we were going to be close, and I was just going to be happy to see you get out of there. But then when you got out of there and you were smiling ear to ear, I was like, wow, she made it. And I checked the tracker again, and sure enough, you were under and able to continue the race. Now that leads us sort of to this. By the way, that was a moment. I think that was just seeing your smile getting out of that water and knowing that you had conquered the swim, which was the biggest thing that we were going into this was, wouldn't it have been a shame had you brought your bike all the way from Tulsa and never got to ride it? Yeah. And man, to see your face coming out of that water is certainly like a great moment for us. And then you were so happy. We're like, no, you gotta keep going. Like you get to keep going now. Let's go. So you guys both get into transition. Just before we even get going, how did it bother you that it was so far away? Yeah, it was like a 0.4. It was probably to your bike was probably a half mile. Did you find that was sort of, were you able to kind of gather yourself over that half mile, or was it just annoying?
It was annoying. It was absolutely annoying. That was stupid. There is I get it. I've heard from a lot of people that is extremely typical for Ironman branded races. But when you are a back of the packer like I am, and you come out of the water with just 2 minutes to spare, and you know that this, 0.39 mile, exactly, they said, run between the swim exit and your bike is there, and you need every moment that you can get to get out and do your thing. I found it annoying. I thought that was completely ridiculous. I tried to run as much of it as I could, but you're barefoot on concrete and you're going through a tunnel, and they do their best to clean it, but there's still spectators out there. You don't know what people are throwing on the ground. It was difficult. I did not like that, not one little bit.
What about you, Mike? Did you how did you deal with that little half mile jog to the bike?
It was annoying. It was too long. I didn't mind a bit of a transition. I know that's, like Erin said, that's typical, but it didn't bother me as much until I thought about it after. Because I didn't do as well as I wanted, I kind of had a different mindset coming out of the water, and I was ready to just attack the bike. I just kind of said, okay, the bike is my strength. I have some time in my head to make up. And so that's kind of what my mentality was after, when thinking about it after, it sucks. Like it's like Erin said, it's dumb.
Annoying. And then you kind of just you started going into the next question, which would be, all right, now you're getting on the bike. How quickly do you get out of swim mode? Is that a challenge for you you've been just spent over an hour in the water to get out of that swim mode and then into the bike mode. Now for Mike, I know you're going to be more aggressive. You're kind of just flip-flopping from, all right, I made it, thank God, I'm soaking wet, but now this is my strength. Did you find that transition of mindset to be difficult?
I didn't. That's the one thing that I practiced a lot of, just because I'm not a fan of tapering and I'm not a fan of low intensity stuff. So that's a lot of what I practiced in the last couple of weeks, was just a mental game, and just being able to, flip that emotional switch of, okay, I didn't do well, to, all right, now I'm going to go out here and destroy this bike. And it happened pretty quickly for me. And I think it helped that the bike is my strength. I don't know if it would have been as effective if it would have went from swim to the run, but because it's, the bike is a strength of mine, it was fairly easy to do pretty intensely.
And then sort of like, I think a little bit, again, you guys are so different. You're so alike and yet so different. Erin came out of the water, and unlike you, we were able to kind of flip the switch and get into bike mode. I think she was so happy that she got out of the water in time. She was like celebrating things, as we just were talking about, and then go on. At what point, Erin, did you realize, all right, now it's time to switch. Let's get to work on the bike?
As soon as I got into transition, honestly, as soon as I got into transition and saw my bike and got my gear ready to go. I was like, okay, it's time. Let's get this done. The main problem that I had wasn't really like getting my legs back under me because of the swim or anything like that. I'm usually pretty good with that. I'm usually pretty solid in transitions. The issue I was having was because of the run from swim out into transition, I just had a really tough time. It took me 3 or 4 miles on the bike to get my breathing under control, to breathe properly. My legs were spinning fine. I didn't have a problem there. My balance was fine. I got through Waterworks part of the bike course fine, but it took a good 3-4 miles before my breathing would regulate, and I felt like I could get out on the rolling hills and be okay. Because my thing was, man, if I don't get my breathing under control, the hills on Veterans Parkway are not going to be enjoyable.
Yeah. And, you transitioned pretty well. I mean, we were watching you. I was staying with your mom and dad, and we were watching you transition. And they were like, oh, why is she taking so long? And I'm like, no, this is good. She's got to get her hearing aids in. She's got to get all this stuff done. And I thought you did really well in transition. Mike, you were already out. I actually, from a spectator standpoint, once you went out, I knew you were going to be good. I'm like, Mike's going to go hammer it. And I knew not only that, but I knew that you would be sort of a little upset with your swim time, and that was going to fuel you even more mentally to get out there and want to make up time on the bike. I had no worry about you or any concern when you went out. But again, you never know. To Erin's point, it's not uncommon to feel a little strange when you start the bike, because you've just been in the water for over an hour. Now you're getting out. It's like a new medium, and and then you did the run, and you have to kind of change that mentality over to the bike. And, so it's not uncommon to take a few miles to get out there and get started. How did you guys, how did you find the course in the early going? Cause we can kind of cover the entire bike, I think, in sort of one question, just a general, what was the course like? How was your mentality going through it all? We'll start with Mike with that one. Were you just trying to attack it the whole time? What did you think out there?
I really was. I got out, and I think that's where the disappointment of the swim helped me, because we had the headwind coming into the first part of it. So, that was what a lot of people said was a challenge, but being as I had that frustration from the swim, I could attack it. And truthfully, when people said how big the headwind was, I didn't notice. I really didn't notice a lot. And I think that's not necessarily, I don't mean that as an arrogance thing. I just mean that, the I got to get this done and not care what's going on and mentality. And I truthfully, I love that course. That was it was a nice balanced course, the rolling hills. It had the one that posed a little bit of a challenge, but it was by no means anything that I didn't see a huge amount of people having insane struggles with. So it was really fun.
Yeah. And we've done a lot of bike work in the last year. All of us has really done a lot of bike work. And I think, the hills that we've done in training are probably a lot more challenging than the ones that you guys had out there, especially since they cut out the biggest hill of the course. But there still was a little bit of a challenge. I know in the beginning, as a spectator, again, watching the Ironman tracker, they show you the average miles per hour per segment. And there was one sort of 10-mile stretch that was everyone was a little bit slower on that 10-mile stretch than they were everywhere else on the course. So Erin, when you went out there, what did you think of the course? Were there moments of challenge? And while we're on that, was the heat coming out? Was this like at what point did you start realizing, like, all right, this is like Mike mentioned that he had the headwinds, but soon after that starts getting really hot too.
Yeah, it really did too. So actually, I think it was about like halfway or 3/4 of the way through the swim, the sun came out and just started baking us. I could feel it on the back of my neck, even during the swim. When I went out onto the bike, like I said, I had a little bit of a hard time for the first 3-4 miles, but that section was flat. Let me just say, the bike course is absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. It is a gorgeous bike course. And the best thing of the bike course was that it was closed. It was a closed bike course the entire time. So there was no vehicle traffic on the course at all. The only vehicle that was out there was the bike sag support and the tech guy. So it was absolutely a gorgeous course. Had wonderful rolling hills. It was a decent mix. So you weren't just flat pedaling and just spinning your wheels for the entire time. The first half of it, definitely, it was only a 27-mile bike course because they did cut down the bike. The first half is mostly uphill. There are a couple little downhills, but it was a mostly uphill, and there was a headwind. And that headwind got a little tough from time to time. I definitely know that my paces were slower, especially in that 10-mile stretch, than I really wanted them to be. That said, on the way back, though, my average pace was like 17 and a half or something like that, because it was absolutely net downhill on the way back, and you're just flying through those downhills, and that was a lot of fun, especially coming down Veterans and Park Avenue, and just flying on that downhill was great. When I got to the turnaround, though, for the halfway point, I took a little bit of a break, and I just mentioned to the volunteers at the turnaround that my bike feels heavy. And I think it was just because we were pulling uphill in that headwind, and it was tough. That was tough. And then the sun did come out, and it got hot. It got hot on the course. You could feel, and very humid. You could just feel all of that moisture, all of that rain just being sucked up in the sunlight. And it was like a wet blanket out there on that ride. It really was.
It was vicious. I was feeling for both of you guys out there. And I noticed it when you guys went out on the bike, and I walked the bike pump back to the car. And when I came back, I was only, 2-mile walk, a mile there, a mile back. And I was getting sunburn on my neck, and I felt bad for you guys, because I didn't know that I saw a sunscreen station going out on the bike. And man, especially if you're, out there, I know, Mike, you were probably in aero half the time, and you got that positioning, and you're just all open to the sun. I was feeling for you guys. And so we saw Mike come in. I saw Mike go out onto the run. They had the sunscreen station there on the run course. You went back out, man. It was starting to take, did you know that at what point did you like start to realize like that this is going to be part of the challenge? And when you're going out on the run there, and I saw you, I could kind of tell like, it was going to be a run to survive the 13 miles and not necessarily to push yourself. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, and I typically, like I've said, I typically take about the first mile to mile and a half to really get loose. And the one thing with the heat that I like is being big legged. I like I like running in the heat better because I stay nice and loose. I don't cramp up in my calves, which has been a huge issue for me. And with the strong distance between, in the transition, it was good for the bike because we were parked literally right by the bike exit. And so it was a decent little jaunt to get to the run out. So I kind of used that a little bit. I ran probably more than I should have in that, just because I wanted to use that to kind of get my legs under me a little bit better. And, it was kind of when I got out of the tunnel, and I say the little hill, it was literally just a little incline. And I did that one, and I just kind of said to myself, I'm like, oh boy, this is not going to be. And then I kind of tried to talk myself into, no, this is always your mentality. This is always your struggle by mile. And it was just like, you can will your way out of a twisted ankle or a sore leg, but you can't mentally regulate your body temperature. And it was, like I said, I don't know if it had a lot to do, with the fact that I didn't drink a lot of water in the morning, or if the fact that I had the wetsuit on in the warm water for an hour, I'm sure those all contributed, but it was like you said, a run for survival.
Yeah. Yeah. And you looked pretty good. I think you were excited about your bike coming in. You did pretty, you had a strong bike, and you looked pretty good on the way out. And again, I wasn't really concerned about you finishing at that point. I knew you were going to get it done. And you did, you went and you did just that. Now, Erin had a little bit more adventure, I think, coming in on the bike. It was kind of strange for us watching, because from when you're watching and it's a 70.3, what the cutoffs are going to be. If there's no weather issues, when you have to be there at what certain point. And so because of the late start and because they cut the bike course down, we had no idea. We had no idea when you had to be there. And we were just sitting there kind of crossing our fingers and hoping that we could see you on the updates. And I knew pace wise, you had gotten through the swim by the skin of your teeth. So I kind of know, like 14 miles an hour. I kind of want you around there. You were pretty close. That one section that I told you everyone was slower than ever, you were slower on that section, but so was everybody else. And then it was just a matter of whether or not you're going to do fast enough to average it back up to make it there in time. And then, man, skin of your teeth again. What kind of, towards the end of that bike, were you confident that you had made it, or did you have any idea? Did you?
I had no idea. I had no idea.
Were you expecting to take your bike and be, that's it? What were you thinking?
I don't even know what I was thinking. I think I was just thinking, I want to get back into transition and do whatever they tell me to do. If that means stop, then that means stop. If that meant go, that meant go. But I was just going to do the best that I can. I had no idea. I didn't even bother asking anybody what is my cutoff for the bike. I probably should have, so I gave myself something to gear for. But I rolled back into transition, and I asked the official that was standing at bike in, and I said, "Do I have time?" He goes, "You're it. You're last. That's it. You are the last one." And as I racked my bike, got my shoes on, and went to run out, there was a flurry of walkie-talkies going off, and I heard my bib number repeatedly, 126. That's it. 126. She's done. Let her, she's the last one out of transition. And I will be honest, that was, I think it was demoralizing. I didn't know how to explain it that day, but knowing that I was going to be the last runner that they were going to allow. And I knew there were two bikes behind me. So knowing that I was going to be the last runner on the course, that did not do well for my mental health. I'll be perfectly honest, because I went out a run out and I was okay coming out of transition. And then you go through the little tunnel again to get on run course. And there's everybody on their second lap. Because it's a two-loop course. It's a two-loop course. So yeah, I'm with other runners, but I'm just starting my run, and these people are like, "We're out of here. We're doing our last lap, and we're headed toward finish."
Yeah.
So I wasn't alone on the course, but I felt very, very alone coming up on the very first aid station, just over a mile. Coming up on it, knowing that these people were at mile 8, and I was at mile 1. That was demoralizing. That was hard. And then the sun.
We did talk about that a little bit, right? I mean, maybe not as much as we should have, and maybe we didn't prepare you enough for that. But I know we talked about the turnaround up at was it Court Street, and how at the turnaround you either you watch people go into the finish and they're done, and then you got to go turn back around and do the entire course again. Yeah. Which is certainly demoralizing.
Yeah.
I will say though that you got through transition pretty darn quick, and you might have been the last bicycle out, but you weren't the last runner out, or you might have been the last bicycle in, but you weren't the last runner out. And there were people that were after you. Not only that, but some of the people, we saw some of the officials, and they were taking the chips off of people that were coming in on the bike after you.
Right.
And some of those people, they said, be careful, be on the lookout. There's going to be people running out of here without chips.
Yep.
Make sure they don't go. And I knew you still had the chip. I knew you were the last one there. So, and I guess when you're doing it, you don't know that, right? You don't necessarily know. So you feel potentially, I guess you feel like maybe you're last, but you're not.
Well, I mean, the official said, 126, the last one with a chip to go through. Yeah. So that was tough. I came out of transition feeling fine. As my mom put it, I was being mouthy, I guess, to the officials, because I basically said, I'll stay out here, because I asked, I'm like, am I okay on time? And he said, you're fine, go. And I said, okay, I'm going to stay out here as long as they effing let me. So, my mom said I was being super mouthy coming into transition and running out, and I felt fine. I made a couple of little mistakes. So in transition, in the middle portion, they had big tables that had sunscreen and water for fill stations. By the time I got back into transition to go out on my run, they were gone. There was no water in transition and there was no sunscreen in transition. So I said, okay, you know what? I'm okay. I just drank a bunch of water at my bike. I'll take my bottle that has my powdered nutrition in it. I'll take it with me and I will just go to mile 1, fill up with water there. Big mistake. I should have had water. I should have somehow found some water to put in my bottle at transition. That was absolutely a terrible mistake on my part.
Yeah. You know what, though? I struggle. We talk about sort of like the things that went wrong with this race and the walk from the parking lot to, and that's sort of one of the technical things that are annoying about the race. But I think if I was to point out the second thing that I was really disappointed in is I watched Mike go out and they had a table there with the sunscreen. They put it all on him. He was actually in a good mood. He was like, spray. I remember he was going, spray me. And then when you got there, it was all gone and you ran out and you said to me, and the funny part was I actually I ordered a lemonade and I said, hold on, wait, I got to go see Erin. I ran over to you and I'm like, oh, if I would only had that lemonade, I could have just, you're not allowed to give it to you. But at that point, you were out of water. They should have given you the water. They didn't. I would have been like, here, take the lemonade. And, but I didn't have it with me. Had I known, I would have gotten it. But, I don't know. So I want to kind of get back to Mike and, so Mike, you went out on the run and, obviously you were kind of middle of the pack at that point. And did you experience a lot of what Erin was talking about sort of like that feeling of I'm only halfway done and these people are finished kind of thing, or were you just focused on the task at hand?
Well, when I went out, I don't know why the course was laid out really, really nice. And I didn't, and as you guys kind of gave me grief about, I didn't look at the course at like virtually at all. I'm like, I don't know Des Moines. Looking at the course and staring at the map for hours isn't going to do me any good. I know that they'll tell me where to go, so I'm just going to go. Well, I got out and I, like you said, the course was a loop. And the first sign that I saw was mile 8. And I thought, oh gosh, did I take the wrong turn? So that really got me kind of confused. Like I felt bad. I'm like, all right, if nothing else, I'm just going to go through the end, get my medal, look like I got a really good time, and then ended up with a DNF but it is what it is because I'm not going to run backwards. And then I asked a group of ladies that was running by me, and they're like, no, this is the second loop. And so then I was okay. And, like I said, I kind of went through a little bit of, kind of my mental game. Like I said, it was really good to practice. And what really came into play too was when I practiced a walk run with Erin when I was down in Tulsa, because then I kind of went, okay. I said, okay, with this heat, there's no way I'm going to be able to run this whole thing. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do, a 3-in-1 walk run. And I did that for a couple of intervals. And I'm like, okay, I'm literally going to walk run based on the sun. And so I did that. And then I got to, and like you said, that demoralizing turnaround. And I got to the turnaround and you could hear the crowd screaming. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I hate my life right now. Like, I have to go do this again. I know there's a really big hill that I'm going to. And I turned around, and just at the point where there's definitely still plenty of runners out on the course. But at the point I was at, there wasn't. And everybody went to the finish. And I was by myself for about a half a mile, to the point when I actually slowed down just so that I could have people running with me because my head was starting to mess with me. And that was way more impactful than I thought it was going to be. I kind of thought I was going to be able to laugh it out, and I wasn't. Like, I hated my life for about a half a mile. Yeah.
And the heat and humidity didn't help any, I'm sure, at that point. You're like, oh, I got to go sweat in this heat for another 6.5 miles or whatever it is. Eventually, though, you did make it back up, and an hour or so later, whatever it was, you made it back up, and you crossed the finish line. And it was, as a coach watching you cross, I don't know, it was very, it was well earned. It's kind of one of those. You look at the race, you practice for 70.3, you want to do the full distance, you want to get that check mark in, and maybe there's like a little bit asterisk in your mind that, oh, I didn't do a full 70.3, but with that sun and with that heat and with sort of all the mental games that you guys had to deal with in the morning, I think it was at least equivalent to a 70.3 anyway. Did you feel crossing that finish line? Why don't you give us like what's going through your head as you're running down the carpet, approaching the finish line? What were you thinking?
Well, I was thinking a lot, like and it kind of started out with I was about a half a mile back, and like I said, I was pacing, and I said, you know what, I want to give the ending I want to give it a good ending. I want to be able to come across good and, not look like I'm going to die, even though I felt it. But, so I kind of walked a little bit longer than I normally would have. And like I said, I tried to use the sun as a gauge, and I really almost petered out right before I made the turn to go towards the finish. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just got to get there. Like as soon as I saw it, I mean, there's no way to replicate it. There's no way. Yeah, there's no way to describe it. Like it was crazy. And, and to come across and to see you guys and not that you tapped me lightly when I finished, you kind of darn near knocked the wind out. You almost got me harder than the guy that kicked me in the chest, but that was okay. Cause that's kind of how I felt. And it was nice to, cause usually it's, and the only thing I can equate it to is when I did a Fargo 5K and I did it in my fire gear. And so then I heard the crowd like that, but it wasn't even close. And just to see you guys and whatnot. And I'll never forget it. It was awesome just to see people proud of you. Like, it's like, wow, you crushed it. You did it. And what's nice too, is not one single person. I mean, I've never been shy at the fact that this wasn't a full 70.3, but not one person has said it to me. And not one person has asked me what my time was. People have asked, are you satisfied? Are you happy with your performance? And I've been able to kind of address it there, but not one person has ever asked how fast I did it. And I never thought that would be the case, and I mean, obviously there's kids that see your medal. I was that guy that brought the medal to school that the day when I got back. Oh, did you win? No, I did not win. Not even close. But it's just, you can't describe it. And they say that it's like a drug, and yep, I'm hooked.
Yeah, I'm not surprised, man. It feels really good crossing that finish line. And, I think in many ways you did win, man. You overcame a lot that day. And, you learned a lot about yourself. I think you learned a lot about the swim. Maybe be a little more aggressive. You be the kicker instead of the kickee next time. But we'll, we're definitely going to work on that. And I know you got a lot more in the tank ready to go. More races in your future as well. Now, let's switch over to Erin. Last we talked about you. You're leaving the transition, waterless in the heat, dealing with sort of that mental game of being, the last one in on the bike and approaching that first aid station, obviously in the heat. What when were you questioning things going out onto the run? When you made it, I was texting your husband and told him you made it. And we both kind of had like a sigh of relief. Like, we can she's going to do it. Like, the run is her strength. She's going to get this done. It seems like though, maybe you weren't thinking the same way. Maybe your thoughts were still a little concerned about being sort of back of the pack, people waiting for you, that kind of thing. Why don't you give us the blow by blow sort of after that, going through back out on that course?
So yeah, I absolutely was questioning everything. I was questioning pretty much my entire life choices up to that point. It was hard. It was really hard. The run is my strength. I come from a running background, multiple marathons, dozens of half marathons, that sort of thing. So I know that running is my thing. And I'm like, oh, I've done the two hardest disciplines that, for me, the two hardest disciplines, surely I've got this. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. But then, the mental games started playing. And then what I didn't realize is during the swim and during the bike, my left foot felt wrong. And there's no other really way to describe it. And then my foot just felt wrong. And during both the swim and the bike, I chalked it up to the amount of miles that we walked, from parking lot to transition and downtown and all of the things that we were doing leading up to race day. And I was like, no, it's fine. It's fine. It's just wrong. It's not a big deal. And it was actually a big deal. Once I got to mile 1.2, it felt like my foot was just on fire. Like there was something stabbing me in the side of my left foot. And it just lit up like a Christmas tree. And it was really super painful. I looked down at my watch and realized I was only doing 15-minute miles. And I'm like, that's not going to be enough. It's just not going to be enough. I'm probably not going to make cutoff. I'll go as far as they let me, but I'm not going to make cutoff. And okay, it is what it is. It's hot. I got to the first aid station, filled my water bottle. I dumped a bunch of ice down my kit, trying to cool off. I still did not have sunscreen at this point. I could feel the sun baking down on me. I saw all the runners on their second lap that were struggling, and it was an absolutely tough run. I got to the mile 2 aid station. My foot was absolutely hurting. I did not feel well. I had waves of nausea coming along with all of it. Got to mile 2 aid station, walked into it, got to the last table with water, and that's when my vision started going dark. Everything just sort of tunneled down, and I just stopped at the table with my hand on the table at the aid station. And the volunteer looked at me. She's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No." And she's like, "Do you want to sit down?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So they got me into a chair, got ice on my back, and called for SAG. And that's when my race ended. My race ended at mile 2 of the run.
Yeah. And, for us looking in, it was just, you had overcome so much that day, and it just seemed like it's such a, I don't know. It's like not a poetic a finish as, it's like, wow, she got out of that water, and that was challenge A for us. And then challenge B was that she got through the bike. And, when you came in through that bike, I went up and I asked them, I said, when are you guys going to do the cutoff? And they said, "Oh, we're going to let this last guy come in, and then that's it." And I said, "Oh, well, our athlete just finished, she's just 3 miles away, like 10 minutes. She's going to be here any second." And he's like, "Oh, did you say she?" Like they were expecting a guy that they had already kind of figured out an athlete. And I don't know if you passed them, or I don't know if they just didn't know who you were. But when you came in, it was like at every point of the way, there was like a victory, like a major victory. And then for it to end at mile 2, it just seemed like, it just, it could have been such a great poetic day for you. And I think in many ways it still is. And I think, you have a lot of wins here from that day, and a lot of things that you can look at and be proud of. And, certainly for you, I think a courageous day from the beginning to when you finished. And it took nausea and blacking out to get you off of that course.
Yeah.
So I think that you have nothing but, nothing to be shamed of, or, I've DNF'd plenty of times, and with much less courage that you showed out there last weekend. So, are you looking at it more as a victory? Are you looking for your revenge? Are you looking, what's the mindset now that we're kind of settled into post-race after a few days?
So it absolutely goes back and forth for me. 1 minute it's absolute heartbreak, and then the next minute it's like, okay, when's the next one? What's next? What can I do now? So it kind of goes back and forth for me. I'm absolutely ecstatic that I made it out of the swim. That was, if my race had ended right then and there. Okay, cool. I made it out of the water. And that is such a victory for me because the swim was something that scared me so much, and the fact that I got through my 2 weakest disciplines under time. Even if it was super close to under time, it was still under time. So the fact that I did that was absolutely incredible to me. It sucked that my race ended on my strongest discipline, but I actually almost prefer that in a way because I know I can complete a 13.1 mile run. I know that I can. I've done it multiple times in training. I do it on any given Saturday just for fun. So that I know that I can do that. So it wasn't stopping due to incapability. I just had the perfect storm of conditions. I ended up with a stress fracture in my left foot. That's what lit up my foot. I'm in a boot now for a couple of weeks. We believe we caught it pretty early. It's very likely that it fractured on all of those walks that we had around downtown. It's very likely that that's when it happened. So there was a reason for it. It wasn't just quitting for the sake of quitting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like I said, very courageous effort out there. And you throw the stress fracture right on top with things that you had to deal with. But, here's a person who wouldn't go in the water without your buoy at one point, who couldn't make it up Turkey Hill, who, used to look at that as a challenge and the balance issues that you fought through on the bike. For you to be where you are after a year ago, totally different athlete from a year ago. Very proud of you. So I just want to let you know that. And as your coach, I look forward to continuing and watching you grow, just continue to grow and knock out challenge after challenge. I think nothing but positive energy and positive motion going forward. We get that boot off and get right back at it.
Yes.
I think that's a good outlook, and I'm anxious to get going. We finished the race, or we finished the day. And we went out for Mexican food. Yep. Mike, any comment?
I don't want to talk about it. My lack of a nacho hat is still the most disappointing part of my experience in Des Moines, Iowa.
Lack of a nacho.
Well, if that's it, if that's it, there's not much to complain about. I don't know.
There is. There's a lot to complain about. No.
The look that waitress gave you when you asked if they had a nacho hat.
That was pretty epic.
But all in all, I think we did that. It was one of the more epic weekends, I think, that I can remember. Certainly one that I'll never forget. From the race and just from hanging out with you guys and getting ready for the race and then kind of hanging out afterwards. The people that we met there, which I think we should probably touch on. The triathlon.
We can't forget Dan Connor. We cannot forget Dan Connor.
We have to do a little whole section on Dan Connor. Why don't you give us a little rehashing of the Dan Connor story? Because I think he's a big part of our trip there too.
So we got to the hotel on a Saturday after we went to do, I think it was bike check. We did bike check and we came back to the hotel on Saturday, and a gentleman is standing outside in a tri-kit, by the way. Did you realize he was still in he was in a tri-kit that day?
He travels in his tri-kit, I guess.
Yeah, he was in his tri-kit, standing in front of our hotel, and we hop out of our cars and we have our little blue check-in bracelets on, and he looks at Mike and I, he's like, "Oh, are you guys racing tomorrow?" Yeah. He's like, "Great." He goes, "I flew in and my bike was on tri-transport and I don't have a ride to the race. Can I just ride? Can I give you guys a tank of gas and ride with you to the race?" And we're like, "Okay, cool. Sure. Meet us at 4:15." And as it turned out, we just sort of adopted him. we didn't let him go. We're like, "Here's our phone numbers. Come to dinner with us. Meet my parents. It's great fun." He just sort of hung out with us, and he was Dan Connor from San Jose, California. He's an awesome dude. Awesome.
And not the Dan Connor from the Roseanne show, but
no, not that guy.
But I think what was funny was was we had gone into town, and then into the downtown. Did we go for lunch, or maybe I forget what we did, and we were on our way back, and we saw him walking.
Yes.
And we're like, is that Dan Connor? And so we pulled over, and he was walking back to the hotel. He was going to walk like 2 miles back to the hotel. And we were able to pick him up and literally, I think, adopt him. Mike, you adopt a lot of kids. Do you, would you consider adopting Dan?
Absolutely. What's one more? That's the mentality in our house. What's one more?
Yeah, and we kind of just brought him along with us wherever we went to our pre-race meal and all that stuff, and just a good companion. Then we also we met Anna. Where did Anna come from?
Anna O'Donnell from Montana.
So. Yeah, how did we meet her?
So I am actually part of Wadi Inc. Hit Squad. And so it's another racing team that I belong to. And she is also part of that team. And we have a Des Moines group chat on Facebook going between Wadi members that were doing Des Moines, and I met her there. And on Saturday morning, we were doing a swim, doing a shakeout swim and a shakeout bike, which Mike attempted the shakeout bike, and that didn't work out so well.
We got to talk about that in a second too. Yeah.
But Anna was going to the lake at the same time, and we had been messaging back and forth, and she just didn't want to swim and bike alone. So I said, hey, come on, come join us. So turns out she fit in really, really well with us. Anna is an absolutely fantastic person. I can't wait to race with her again. So we swam together, and then we went out on a shakeout bike, and she was absolutely cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. We kind of met people that were exactly our speed, I think. And that's really a cool thing. Mike, I think we do have to mention your bike. I mean, this is a like sort of a teaching point. I think
it's a very well learned lesson.
Right. Why don't you tell us that story?
Okay. So when Erin said that they went out on a shakeout ride, they went out on a shakeout ride because I had brought 2 bikes with me because I have just recently got a TT bike, and I wasn't sure how comfortable I was going to be on it. I wanted Scott to be able to see me on it and see, okay, yeah, I think in that position you're going to be able to make it. And so when I committed the cardinal sin to some people, and I boxed my bikes. I put my bikes in my pickup box because I felt better having my bikes in a pickup box than having them dangle on my not quite sturdy bike carrier. So I took the front wheels off to make them easier to compact into the box and not get at each other. Well, when we put them back together to put them in the hotel room, I put the wrong front wheels on each of the bikes and didn't realize that until we were at the shakeout ride. So I get the bike off Erin's bike carrier and start wheeling it, and the front wheel just won't roll. And I thought, great, what a time for my bike to go to heck. And I think it was either Erin or Anna that noticed. They're like, your wheels aren't the same. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And as soon as that happened, I knew exactly. And I'm like, well, you guys let me know how that bike ride is because I ain't going anywhere. And they're like, well, you were riding it in the hallways.
Right.
We were, but the air pressure in that tire was significantly lower. And I wasn't going to, it's one thing to lower the air pressure to ride 30 feet in the hallway of a hotel like children, but I wasn't going to do, a 10, 15 mile shakeout ride like they wanted to do. I'm just like, well, forget it. You guys go. I'll be fine. So yeah, that was my shakeout ride. My shakeout ride ended up being in the hallways in the hotel.
Yeah, and it's like one of those where you're like, oh, I didn't get to ride before the race, but then it's not. On the other hand, it's like, well, thank God we actually did go out there and try to ride because then you would have showed up on race day, and that would have been a nice run for me to have to run as the Sherpa that morning to have to try to run back to the hotel, get your tire, and bring it all the way back before you got out of the swim. Although with your swim, I probably could have made it.
Thanks. Yeah, but they have to see you walking up that hill. I'm not sure you would have made it. I think me swimming is still faster than you walking up that hill.
It could be. That would have been a sweaty one. But overall, I think a great trip. Like I said, it was one of the it was definitely a weekend I'll never forget. And I want to thank you guys for just making it awesome. And really both of you guys giving it a super courageous effort that day, overcoming everything that they threw at you. And I think for both of you, in many ways, the race was very successful. So I thank you guys for just being awesome people.
I think, I want to address one thing that Mike said, he had it in his head, well, I didn't do a full 70.3. And there was actually a conversation about this that I was reading. You do the race that was given to you. And that's it. You couldn't control the fact that we had a 2-hour delay. We couldn't control the fact that we had a half a bike course. We couldn't control the fact that the sun decided to come out and become a convection oven out there. We couldn't control for those things. We both did the race that was given to us. And there was nothing we could do about that. There was nothing I could do about the fact that I have a stress fracture in my foot. There's nothing we could do about the fact that that we were delayed for 2 hours and totally threw off our game. We ran the race that was given to us, whether that was 70.3 or 42.3. But I mean, if you honestly though, if you tally up all of the times we had to walk up and down that hill and through downtown and everything, it probably ended up being a 70.3.
Pretty anyway. Close. Definitely pretty close. What too is that, it's a race, right? So you get out there, and especially Mike, I think your mindset going out on the bike, now you only have 27 miles as opposed to the 56. So that you can kind of expend more energy. You're going to ride it a little bit harder than you would if you had the 56 miles. So you're still exerting that kind of energy. And, I do think that with everything that you guys overcame, less of an asterisk. I mean, it's one of those things. I had friends that got pulled out of Lake Placid in the swim, and that they didn't do the full 2.4 in an Ironman race. And he said, you know what, I probably was going to check off the box and never do another Ironman again. But because I didn't finish that swim, because they took him out, he felt like he needed to do that. Is there any, Mike, for you, is there any need to go back and based off of this race, is there any need to say, hey, I still got to do a 70.3, an official 70.3, or have you kind of just said this was it, and I at least I've got that experience and now I'm moving on?
Well, what I had originally planned to want to do, I've got Madison coming up in September, so my initial thought was to compare times, and I know that they're two completely different courses, but being as Madison's fairly hilly and that's my strength, I was able to, in my head, be able to say, okay, well, if I can get remotely close to the same time, that's a win. Well, obviously I can't do that now. So, and so, yeah, I've got that. Okay, I need to go and complete a 70.3 because, in my head, I mean, the run wasn't what I wanted it to be. The swim wasn't what I wanted it to be. And the bike wasn't as long as I would. So, I mean, there's a lot of unchecked boxes with that. But, like Erin said, too, the hardest we've ever done, and they've done Ironmans. There's been a lot of people that have posted that. So, I've kind of gotten over that.
Can you do me a favor, Mike? Just could you repeat that last part? You cut out on the sound there.
Oh, sure. I had a lot of people that have read, and I've even had a few that have messaged me that I've kind of talked to that said this is the hardest race they've ever done, and they've completed Ironmans. And, so that kind of gives me that, hey, in the crux of, I mean, the Ironman community, you talk about races. I mean, there's people that have said, well, back in such and such in 2014. Well, I'm always going to be able to say that I did Des Moines 2021. And, the stories that are going to be there about it, I was there. I did that. So, I mean, there's that part of it that, I mean, yeah, anybody, and when you look at the course, Des Moines is a fairly flat, I don't want to call it easy. No 70.3 is easy, but, comparatively rating, I would rate that run as a fairly decently easy run. There wasn't a whole lot of hillage. So when you get a normal day, people are going to be able to look at that and say, well, look at what my run was compared to your. No, your run compared to mine, there's not going to be a whole lot. And there's going to be a lot of historical backing for that. So,
yeah,
I kind of teeter back and forth on how I think of that, but I'm going to go crush Madison now is my mentality.
Yeah. We gotta start putting a plan in place for that one next, I think. I had something on my head and I totally forgot. I'm spacing out on it. But anyway, what's next for you, Erin?
Oh, I'm not done. I'm not done by a long shot. Chattanooga 2022, right?
We got a kind of a pencil circle around that one, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Chattanooga 2022. Let's go. No, I'm not done. I already have some stuff planned for fall, so I'm not jumping right back into 70.3 right now. I've got virtual Boston Marathon. I've got a half marathon that I run every year, every November, that I want to do, that I will do. So I think I'm going back to a running focus for right now. I've got to let the stress fracture heal up. But then we made some, between my husband and Scott and I, we have come up with a plan that is going to be a little bit better. I want to get a couple more successful Olympics without using the buoy under my belt. I want to do that. I need to really reassess my hydration plan. And so the process of reassessing that is underway right now, and getting myself truly into a great race shape. Now that I know what I'm capable of doing from a mental standpoint, I need to get it's not that I wasn't fit enough for a 70.3. I was. If it wasn't for the heat in my foot, I would have completed it, honestly. I am fit enough for a 70.3, but what more can I do next? So I'm not done. I'm not done. It'll probably take another year before I attack another 70.3, but it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. It's always kind of, you try to analyze it when you finish. I remember finishing when I did Lake Placid the last time and driving home, my daughter was like, Dad, I'm going to coach you. Tomorrow I want you to go out and ride the bicycle for 8 hours. Like, no, I'm not doing that. But it's kind of interesting to, to get your feedback. Both of you get feedback after the race, right after the race, and feel like, try to sort of, change around the plan, make sure that we're a little, I think we can be a little bit more aggressive going into the next one for both of you. And you'll be even more ready to go and conquer those races and earn those medals. I can't wait to get involved with your next steps, both of you. That being said, I've kept you both here a long time today, so thank you both for your time on a Friday afternoon, nonetheless. And any last words from either one of you? Start with Mike.
I don't think so. I do want to thank everybody. Whether just being a part of this team is amazing. Having the teammates there. The two of us there was fantastic and life changing. But the messages that I've gotten. We have our group chat of the athletes that you coach. People that would message me, and it was fantastic. I can't imagine doing this alone. I can't. That's how the beginning of my journey was. I did all of this. I have a great support system and family here, but there's no way I could have done it without everybody out there. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to getting Nathan out there, watching you race and watching you compete. He's going to be the next one in line, and he'll be beating you.
He's going to crush me. He will.
He's going to be beating you really soon. So we'll get him out there as soon as possible. What about you, Erin? Any last words?
If you are considering any of these races, I absolutely recommend Des Moines. I think that it really was a good race. I think with some logistical fixes, and I think that they're listening about the logistics. I absolutely recommend it. Also, I want to say thank you. I have amazing teammates and an absolutely amazing coach. If you're hearing this and you are not being coached by Scott, you need to reconsider. If you've got goals in triathlon, marathoning, and you want an absolutely wonderful coach who is going to get you there, you need to reach out to Scott, because he will. There is no way I could have gotten from where I was a year ago to where I am now without the coaching skill that Scott has. So, if you're listening to this and you're on the fence about it, this is my recommendation to you. So it was awesome. Thank you guys so much for being there with us.
Thank you for all that you do, all your courage, it's just, honestly, I feel like it's my pleasure to be involved in your story and to watch you continue to grow in the sport. It's been incredible so far, and I'll send you the check in the mail. But thank you both for a great time, a great weekend. And again, I look forward to doing it again. And maybe next time I'll actually I'll get in the mix with you guys. That would be awesome. And I know we got some thoughts in mind for next year. I don't want to say them out loud too much, because I don't want everyone to join our race and then it sells out, and then we get shut out of our own goal race, but I'm sure we're going to have some announcements in the next few weeks of things that we got going on in the next year. So both of you guys, awesome job. And I look forward to continuing working with both of you. We're going to wrap it up there, folks, and we'll be back at you next week. I hope I think we're going to get this podcast out maybe over the weekend, if not Monday or Tuesday. So you're probably listening to Monday or Tuesday, and that's about it. And again, if you want to support the podcast, you can head over to patreon.com/ordinary marathoner, become a patron, and you get your name listed on the scroll. You'll see that scroll in about 3 seconds after I sign out with "Every day is an ordinary day unless you make it extraordinary." So get after it, guys.
Whoop!